This is a Mark III clasp from benchdogs.co.uk, and it's the same clasp you'll find on the Mark III Rail Square, this black one here. And today we're going to use the Mark III upgrade kit to replace our green cams on our Mark II with this clasp. Will it work? Is it easy? I have no idea. Let's find out. So I reviewed the Mark III Rail Square from benchdogs.co.uk and we decided it was very good. And some of the standout features of this, it works across multiple rail systems, so no matter what brand you have, this is going to work for you. It was also incredibly accurate when we tested it, insanely accurate. And it had this standout feature here of this class that made it incredibly quick and easy to use. And we commented at the time that that was a significant upgrade from the cam system that was adopted on the Mark II. These came loose, a few people didn't like these at all. Now when it comes to recommending the Mark III Rail Square, we decided that if you were a multi-rail user, it was a worthy upgrade. If you were new to the system and rail squares in general, it was a great product to buy. But if you were a Mark II Rail Square user and you didn't want to have multiple rail system, it already tied into your brand, then a better option was to upgrade those cams for this clasp here. And Benchdogs do a Mark III Rail Square upgrade kit for £20 on their website. And I mentioned it. Now a lot of people got in touch and said, hey Andy, tell us more about that class, because we are Mark II users and we would love to be able to upgrade our systems, but is it worthwhile? And the questions that you've been asking me about that upgrade kit is it easy to install, or do I need to go to some sort of machinist or machine shop? Is it accurate in use? Is it worthwhile me spending the £20 plus shipping to actually do this and get it going in my shop? No idea. So I got in touch with Ralph over at benchdogs.co.uk and said, hey Ralph, but a lot of interest in this little £20 upgrade kit for the Mark II. Could you send me one over and we can have a look at it? So as always, thank you Ralph for supporting the channel and sending this over. And let's put this thing on. So this video, we're going to start off by using the Mark II Rail Square as is, not upgraded, to give me a baseline of accuracy that we can use to contrast after we've done the upgrade. We're going to be using the 5-cut method for doing that, but I'm not going to explain the 5-cut method in this video because I did a really thorough job and explained the maths in this video here when I reviewed the Mark III Rail Square. We'll then look at the kit itself and see what we get as well as the clasp in that kit. It's worthwhile understanding that. And then we will use that kit to upgrade the Mark II Rail Square. Once we've done that, we'll put it through its paces, having been upgraded, and do a comparison between the new accuracy and the old accuracy to see whether we've lost anything or even gained anything in that. And then we'll give some final thoughts, and that will wrap this video up quite nicely. So let's start off by doing a baseline test on the Mark II Rail Square. So here's my test piece of wood, and all we're going to do is to make 5 cuts. I'm going to cut down this edge first of all to give me a reference edge. I'll use that reference edge to cut this edge to cut this edge to cut this edge, then a final cut here. And I'll use this offcut to actually measure the accuracy of that device. I've got a number of tabletop protectors here on my bench because I don't want to cut into my bench, and they just raise up a little bit from that bench. And again, these are from our friends at Benchdogs. Using the Mark II Rail Square, and obviously we're using these green cams here, and as always in my world, the festival track and the festival track saw. Now I just want to show you something before we get into the accuracy test. When you use the Mark II rail, you can see that this channel here on the back of your rail is sliding on to this protrusion here on the rail square itself. And I won't put it all the way on. And then when you close your cam down, that pushes that channel against that protrusion on your rail square. So the rail square gets its accuracy from this edge here, your reference edge on either side, and this side of that protrusion. That needs to be 90 degrees. And like all rail squares from Benchdogs, you get a calibration report. So I'm talking about this blue edge here and this blue edge here. And on my device, that's 90.001 degrees. And this blue edge here and this blue edge here is 90.003 degrees. And back in the Mark II Rail Square review, we put that through its test and we proved that to be accurate. So I know that my rail square is accurate in terms of how it's set up to use. And that's important to remember, and we'll come back to that shortly when we look at the difference that the clasp gives us. So I'm going to slide this on, to a reasonable position and lock those clams in place. Now you can see that this clam here is quite loose, this one is quite tight and doing a good job, but this one is loose. And a lot of people fed back that they have the same thing with these clamps. So although it's supposed to be toolless, you've got to tighten these inner screws here to make it efficient and accurate. So with my rail square and my rail assembled, I can just go through and make my 5 cuts. So here's our offcut, and the equation we need is A minus B, width here and width here, divided by the overall length, sine minus 1 of that lot, all divided by 4. So in our world, A equals 39.61, B equals 39.96, the length equals 488.71. And again, if you want to understand how I measured that length accurately using something that's only got a range of 150, go ahead and watch that or the video we spoke about. So we now know that our error is going to be 39.61 minus 39.96 divided by 488.71, and that equals minus 0.00071617, and I'm going to take the arc sine of that, so minus 0.041, and then I'm going to divide that by 4. So on my Mark II rail square, before we upgrade it, I've got a 0.01 degree error on that device. So that's my baseline. So with our baseline set, that minus 0.01 degree error, let's see what we get in the kit. So the main star of the show is the clasp itself. And it's the same as the clasp that comes on the Mark III rail square. The only difference is this has got 4 mounting holes and that's got 3 mounting holes, but in purpose and use and practical sense, that's exactly the same clasp. Now you also get the kit that allows you to fit this from a DIY. So the first question I was asked, do I need a machinist, a machine shop to do this? No, because the kit comes with everything almost that you need to fit this clasp accurately. You get a 3.3mm high-speed twist drill for obviously drilling the mounting holes. You get an M4 tap. You get 2 small Allen screws that are obviously M4 to go with your M4 tap, and an M4 Allen key. Now you also get this 3D printed black block, and this is actually the thing that allows you to accurately drill your rail square for that bracket using the kit applied. So the only additional things that you're going to need to fit this are some sort of decent drill. I'll use my Festool, other brands are available, and I would recommend that you would have a tap wrench. Now I have seen people put these in their drill and use their drill to do it, and I guess that's okay, but I find that can be a bit extreme when you're trying to tap into aluminium and you can ruin the very thread that you're creating. So I would rather use a tap wrench. Now I do actually have a full-blown tap and die set, and in my set I have a tapered M4, an intermediate M4 and a blind M4 tap. And if I was doing this job outside of using the kit, I would probably start off with my tapered tap just to make it easy for me to start. I'm probably finished with the intermediate, to be honest with you, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use what comes in the kit because that's probably what you will use as well. So that's it. We've got the kit, we've got our drill, we've got our tap wrench. So the next job is to actually get this thing mounted. So the first thing is to drop off these cams because we no longer need those cams. And that's no harder than coming in with a 4mm wrench of some sort, and those things that you're very used to tightening up, loosen off. Now the thing about this upgrade kit, it doesn't negate you going back to these cams. So if you did do the upgrade, or we do the upgrade kit here, and decide it's completely pants, then we can still use these cams. We're not destroying that ability by upgrading. So put those on one side until you know you're happy. Now when you're looking at the M2, obviously mine is this glass beaded silver effect, and yours is more likely to be a black. This was a very, very early pre-production run that Benchdogs shipped over to me. And you can see I've got it engraved with Woodgrafter here, and I've got the Woodgrafter logo on here, as well as the Benchdogs one. Yours is likely to be different in colour. It's likely to be the black anodised that Benchdogs moved to soon after this pre-production run, but the kit and the method is exactly the same. The first thing is you take your 3D printed calibration block, and you can see it's got 4 holes inside and these shoulders here. And on the top here, it's got this word track printed. And that's obviously referencing where your track goes, which is here. And those little angled shoulders are going to engage with this hexagon here, the one that's got my Woodgrafter logo on it. So find that hexagon, orientate it in the direction of the track, and then simply lock that into place. So you can see what I'm doing there. And that's it. It's that simple to line this thing up. Now you can see that this is pretty thick, so it will in theory guide your drill down so it's nice and square to your aluminium base. But bear in mind this is plastic, it's 3D printed, and this is a high-speed twist drill that's brand new and incredibly sharp, one assumes. So be careful, take your time, and try and make sure that you drill straight as well. Don't just rely on that, otherwise it will waggle about, and you probably will change the positions of those holes. I've just brought in a scrap piece of wood, and now we'll get the bit into our drill, and that's simply a case of drilling through. Now that was really simple. The only thing as always that I don't like about drilling aluminium in my shop is you get these little aluminium filings all over the place. So I'm just going to clean the bench down before I take the next step. So that was relatively painless, apart from the aluminium filings. The only thing I would say is that the block does suffer a little bit. I could see, even though I was being careful, bits of black shaving coming over this, so I probably have changed the orientation of those holes. I'm just checking that my bracket does line up with those 4 holes, so mission accomplished. So now we can tap these holes. So I'm going to come in with my tap wrench, drop the supplied tap into that wrench. So aluminium is pretty soft, but make sure that you are going into that whole square, and that's looking pretty good. And once you've got this thing started, you're good to go. Now this works okay, but the only thing I would say is that you've drilled a 3.3mm hole inside your T-square and you're using a 4mm tap. So slow and steady is going to win the day on this one. But once you're there, it all seems to be pretty good. The minute you feel it getting tight, just back off a little bit. Otherwise you're compressing those little aluminium shards here that you make inside the hole, and that's why it goes tight. So just keep backing out to clear the thread and you'll be fine. Now, having just given you some sage advice about not going too heavy-handed, I went too heavy-handed on my final hole and I've managed to snap the tap that came with the kit. And that tap is now quite happily stuck inside that hole. Now the problem I've got with this being aluminium and the tap being a hard steel, I can't drill that out because I'm just going to, the drill's going to wander off, and I don't have any specialist equipment to allow me to fix that. Now I've got away with that because it's only the front 2 holes that you actually need to secure the clamp. So I'm just going to file that flat. But if that had happened in one of these front 2 holes, that would have been game over and I could no longer fit the clamp. So I'd be back to my little green things on here. So yeah, be careful. 3.3mm hole and a 4mm tap. Make sure that you go slow and steady and keep backing out and backing out to clear the debris from the holes as you're doing. Otherwise you'll make that mistake, and as I've just discovered, it's very easy to do. Okay, so with your holes tapped and your mistake recovered, it's now time to just fasten this on. It just simply rests on those 4 holes, come in with your M4 screws and the supplied Allen key, and then just drop that into position. So that's our clip installed. And obviously I've now got more aluminium debris as we've tapped those holes out, so I'm going to clean the bench again. So now in theory it's as easy as sliding our rail into position, hooking the clamp over, tighten it down, and locking that into position. So there you go. So your Mark II Rail Square is now fitted to your rail using a clamp system. So there you go. That's the Mark III clip fitted to the Mark II rail, and our rail is all secure and it seems to be working okay. So do you need a machinist shop? No, not really. I did it with basic woodworking tools, but I did have a challenge. I made a mistake on that final hole and managed to snap off the tap inside the hole, but luckily I got away with it. So the next question is about accuracy, and you got in touch and said, hey, if that clip is pulling into the rail rather than the cams pushing away from the rails, does that change anything? Does that change the accuracy? And we're going to test that now. So before we jump into the actual test, I just want to explain why this could be a challenge for us. Now we know that when we looked at the cams are pushing the rail against this reference edge here, but the clip pulls the rail in against this reference edge here. And when we come back and we look at the calibration report that came with this Mark II rail, we've got a calibration report that says that this reference edge here is 90.001 degrees to that edge. And we've got a calibration report that says that this reference edge here is 90.003 degrees. So we know that's pretty good, and when we did the test, 0.01 degree tolerance is reasonable enough. But there's nothing in our calibration report that talks about this edge in reference to these two edges. So I don't even know whether that's a quality controlled edge. But we're going to use this edge now as the rail pulls in for our accuracy. So that's why people are wondering whether or not it's accurate when you've got this clip on. So let's find out. So same technique again, we're going to make our reference cuts, cut 2, cut 3, cut 4, cut 5, use the offcut to measure our tolerance. I've got the bench top savers set up again so I don't break my bench. Okay, so here's my offcut. A is 18.64, B is 18.61, and the overall length is 477.27. So let's do our equation. So 18.64 minus 18.61 divided by 477.27 equals 0.00006286. If I now take the arc sine of that, that equals 0.0036, etc. If I divide that by 4, we get an accuracy of 0.0009 degrees. So, interesting. On our baseline we had 0.01, and with the new clip I've got 0.0009. So significantly more accurate with the clip than without the clip. Didn't expect that, but good to know. So there you go, that's the Mark III rail clip upgrade installed to the Mark II Rail Square. And I think it is a worthy upgrade. It makes it a lot easier to use, and as we've seen in our tests here, non-scientific, significantly more accurate than the cams were. And it could be that it's actually putting consistent pressure across that, thinking about that, rather than two cams pushing at two different points. It could be to do with that as well. There's obviously human error to worry about as well. But from a 0.01 to a 0.0009 difference, you can't really argue with that. Even allow for tolerances and errors, the thing's accurate, super accurate. In terms of installation, it wasn't too hard. It was medium hard, but it's definitely not a no-brainer. And if you get it wrong, you have ruined your chance of putting this clip on there. If my mistake with that tap had been on one of the front holes rather than the rear holes, I couldn't have fitted the clip. Game over. I'm stuck with the cams forever. So just walk into that with your eyes open. I think as long as you take your time and you're careful as you're doing the tapping, and you probably add some lubrication on that, probably back off a lot more than I did. There was a final hole, I was getting giddy and excited and overconfident probably. So just focus on that and you should be okay. In terms of accuracy of fitting, the little black 3D printed thing did its job well. Took a bit of abuse as we were drilling the holes, so you couldn't use that more than once, but then again, you're not going to. The twist drill is of high quality. The tap is of a good quality, just my clumsy hands broke that down. I would definitely recommend the tap wrench if you're going to do this job. So that's £20 from benchdogs.co.uk. It's a worthy upgrade to the Mark II. If you don't have the budget for going for the Mark III Rail Square and you've already invested in the Mark II system, it's a worthy upgrade to take you to this sort of functionality. So if money wasn't a constraint for me and I had a choice of investing in the Mark III or upgrading the Mark II, I would invest in the Mark III. It feels nicer in use. I love the anodizing on this, and I love these built-in shoulders rather than the slidey clip that we have on the Mark II. And even fitting the rail on and taking the rail off, it just feels smoother on this one because of the way it's designed. And those extension plates you can get and other accessories make it a worthwhile purchase. But if you're not interested in all that, you want something that's functional, that's accurate, does the job, recommend the clip. It's going to upgrade you perfectly, and for 20 quid you can't go wrong. And don't forget, as always, you use the code the Woodgrafter at checkout and you'll get 5% off that £20, whatever that works out at. I hope you found this useful. Hope it's answered some of those questions that you've had. Take care in the workshop, and I'll see you next time on the Woodgrafter.